Alright guys, we made it to Friday and we are back for our championship score predictions. Let's jump into these. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Loads to talk through today. We had all the midweek fixtures going on, which we'll be discussing throughout today's video. And of course, we are back to give our championship score predictions ahead of the weekend. So make sure to get all your thoughts and predictions down below. And as always, if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. And starting out with Saturday's early kickoff between Huddersfield and Sheffield United. This game coming at a really interesting point in the season. Huddersfield clinging on to that place in the top six at the moment, and Sheffield United, one of the sides who are right hot on their heels at the moment in the chasing pack. It's going to be an interesting game. I obviously saw Huddersfield live in midweek come to Deepdale. Wasn't the greatest performance, but I think that they were fairly happy to sort of come, be quite resolute and hard to break down. They were fairly happy to leave with the point. There wasn't all too much in the game, but I thought that Preston probably just about edged it. Going up against Sheffield United, going to be a tough game because they really seem to be in their rhythm now. Now, they have had a few injuries which have maybe thrown them off track. You know, David McGoldrick picking up an injury, Ryan Brewster as well. Two blows to them going forward there. But with Gibbs White coming back into the picture, with the form and momentum that they're playing with at the moment, I think the Blades could edge this one. Obviously, we can never rule Huddersfield out at the moment because they are on the longest unbeaten run in the Championship, unbeaten in their last 11 games. They were hard to break down, to be fair to them. It was a good defensive performance away at Deepdale in midweek, but I've just got a gut feeling that Sheff United may edge this one and end the unbeaten run. I'm going to go 2-1 Sheff United in that game, with FIFA going 2-0 Huddersfield. Next then to Barnsley up against QPR. Is this the point of the video where I predict my weekly Barnsley loss? I think it is, to be honest with you. Another defeat for Barnsley in midweek, 2-1 away at Luton, and things don't get much easier for them in this game against the QPR side, who are playing with a real swagger about themselves at the moment. It was Chair and Willock both on the score sheet in midweek. Chair with a brilliant goal. Willock, albeit he was massively helped by a Joe Lumley blunder, but decent point all things considered against a very tough Middlesbrough side. If they win this game, they'll be really well set up, and this sort of unbeaten run that they find themselves on at the moment will extend into another week. I can't see past the QPR away winning this one. Barnsley at some point over the next month or so will throw a spanner in the works and they will pick a result up out of somewhere, but do I see it happening in this one? I'm not so sure. I'm going to go 2-0 QPR with FIFA going 1-0 Barnsley. Next up then to St Andrews for Birmingham up against Luton. Birmingham had a pretty tough game in midweek, in fairness to them. 3-1 loss to Bournemouth. Bournemouth seemed to start that game really quite fast, and it just got away from Birmingham a little bit. And this game won't be much easier for them because Luton themselves are on quite the roll in the Championship at the moment. They've won 3 out of their last 4 matches. It was another win for them in midweek against Barnsley, and they're only 1 point off the top 6 with a game in hand. They're in that category of teams at the moment just below the top 6 who have still got absolutely everything to play for, and I sort of feel like Luton are a little bit of the dark horse in the top 6 race, to be honest with you, because throughout the season we've always been talking about, you know, Forest, who have snuck up in there, Middlesbrough, who are great now under Chris Wilder, Sheffield United, who have always had the games in hand, but Luton's underlying numbers throughout the season in terms of chances created and things like that have always been up and amongst the top 6 clubs, and they're now putting that into form with the results they're picking up. Earlier on in the season, there was that bizarre result at Kenilworth Road when Birmingham put 5 goals past Luton. I think that Luton may get a little bit of revenge in this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Luton in that game, with FIFA going 2-0 Birmingham. Next up then to Bloomfield Road for Blackpool up against Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth clicked back up into gear in midweek, like we were just speaking about, putting 3 goals past Birmingham. A lot more tempo and purpose about their play, and that's the sort of side that we expect to see from Bournemouth really from now until the end of the season, although I do still think there will be some hiccups along the way, and potentially going into this one, Blackpool have been a real sort of sucker for those sides at the top of the Championship. They took points off Bournemouth in the away trip that they had there earlier on in the season. I think that Bournemouth were 2-0 up at half time. Blackpool got back into that game. They've taken points off Fulham this season as well, so Blackpool seemed quite well equipped to deal with the big boys in the Championship. It was a decent point for Blackpool in midweek away at Coventry as well. Probably even maybe edged that second half and could have gone on to get the winner in that game as well. Dale was a player who stood out to me with the assist for that Medine goal. Do you know what? For a prediction in this one, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Blackpool get something from this game. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Bournemouth did look good in midweek, but I still think they could be maybe a little bit unreliable. So I'm going to go 1-1. FIFA's going 2-0 Bournemouth. Next up then we head to Hull up against Fulham. Fulham absolutely prolific once again in midweek as they put 3 goals past Millwall. Mitrovic with a brace, and he's already got himself up to the 30 goal mark, which is absolutely obscene given that we're only in February. It is a scary thought thinking about how many goals he's actually going to go ahead and hit this season. But I think that Fulham come into this game as the obvious favourites. It was another loss for Hull in midweek, 3-1 against Derby. And Hull do seem like, dare I say it, a little bit of a streaky team this season. They've had a couple of sort of winning runs and they've sort of come back down to earth with a bump over these last 2 defeats. Looking at their next fixtures as well, they do have some pretty tough games coming up. The next 3 games being against Fulham, Sheffield United and QPR. But after that, things ease up a little bit with games against Barnsley and Peterborough. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see maybe another streak on the way for Hull. Maybe a couple losses coming, followed up by some wins after that. So for this game, I'm going to go 3-1 Fulham. Just think they've got too many goals in them at the moment, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. Next then to the Riverside for Middlesbrough up against Derby. I'm sure that this one's going to be an interesting atmosphere, isn't it? Quite a bit of stuff to talk about in terms of the things happening off the pitch between these two sides before we actually get into the football. Now, the latest news that we've actually have out of that whole situation has been that Mel Morris and Middlesbrough have reached an agreement for all the sort of legal battles going on between Borough and Derby over the last few months, and so massive breakthrough in that sense, and maybe that'll ease the tempers of these two fan bases heading into this game. I'm sure it'll be, yeah, quite the spicy atmosphere. In terms of the football on the pitch, both teams have got absolutely everything to play for at the moment. Middlesbrough 7th, just out of the top 6 on goal difference at the moment, but with that game in hand, it was quite the entertaining 2-2 draw that they were involved in midweek against QPR, and Derby probably be with one of the results of the round, beating Hull by 3-1. Tom Lawrence and Ebeselli especially, 2 players who have really been catching my eye recently, and are now only 4 points off survival. With Reading being as bad as they have been, Derby are absolutely well within this survival race now, which is absolutely crazy given the point deduction and the fact that it's February and then they're only 4 points off survival. Having said all of that, I've got a feeling that Borough may just edge this one. I think that with them in the playoff hunt, I'm just going to go for a 1-0 Borough winning this one, with FIFA going 1-0 Derby. I do think it'll be a tight game. Next then to the Den for Millwall up against Cardiff. Millwall obviously had quite a tough game in midweek away at Craven Cottage. They'll be looking to bounce back in this one. But against a Cardiff side who are on a good run of form at the moment, with them winning their last 3 matches, they've put quite the buffer zone between themselves and the relegation zone. I think it's a 12-point gap now, isn't it? And credit has to be given to Steve Morrison here, you know. At the time of the season that they gave him the job, it was seen from the outside looking in as a little bit of a risk, you know, a fairly sort of inexperienced manager coming in as his first full role to get this Cardiff side playing football once again and out of the current predicament near the bottom of the table that they are in. But credit to him, he's got them playing a lot better. They're scoring more goals, 4 past Peterborough in midweek. Jordan Hugill, I think, is really taken to this side, and the fans have really taken to him so far. Another goal for him in midweek as well, and it'll be an interesting sort of reunion for Steve Morrison to be going back to Millwall in this one as well. I do think Millwall will put up more of a fight than Peterborough showed in midweek, and for that reason I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think these two could cancel each other out, with FIFA going for a goalless draw. Next then to the Sea Ground for Forest up against Stoke, and this will be a really interesting game because it either gives Forest the opportunity to pull a little bit more clear of the teams below them, or it allows Stoke the chance to really close the gap on Forest going into this one, just 4 points behind them at the moment, with obviously that game in hand as well. And it was 2 really good wins for these sides in midweek. Forest away at Blackburn, 2-0 in that game. Great stuff given all the circumstances. Stoke with a great win themselves up against Swansea, 3-0 in that game. I feel like I have a bit more reliability with backing a Forest win in this one, but Stoke have looked decent, to be fair, and I think that the new January additions that they've made, starting to bed into this squad now, have given them a little bit of more of a dynamic, especially in the final third, which is an area where they were lacking a bit previously before they made those signings. I think my gut's telling me that Forest may just edge this one, but a Stoke win would certainly shake up the playoff race. I'm going to go 2-1 Forest though. FIFA's going 1-0 Forest. That should be a really interesting game. Next up then to Peterborough up against Preston. Won't be going to this one unfortunately, but should be a decent game. Preston in midweek, goalless draw against Huddersfield, but like I said earlier on in the video, I did think that Preston probably edged that game, and had we taken one of our chances, you know, a few fell to Cameron Archer, a couple of others in the final third and things like that, I certainly don't think that Huddersfield would have had all too many gripes if Preston did walk away with all 3 points. And it looks like a decent opportunity here. We've got a couple of decent looking fixtures coming up. You know, we've got Peterborough followed by a game against Reading as well, to go ahead and put together a few wins, because I suppose that's the only real sort of criticism that we can have of North End lately, is we're probably just drawing all too many football matches. Peterborough really bad in midweek, shipping 4 goals, and it seems like every opportunity that goes by for them to pick up some points and climb out of the relegation zone, it's just they're not taking at this point in time, are they? I know that they carry a little bit more of a threat about them at home. Having said that, I am going to back North End for this one, I think. I think that one thing that has impressed me with Preston recently has been how we've sort of solidified our back line. I think if we do get a few more goals about us, then you'd imagine we get some opportunities for this one. I think we're going to back Preston for all 3 points. I'm going to go 2-0 Preston in this game, with FIFA going 1-0 Peterborough. Next up then, we head to Reading up against Coventry, a game which has quite a bit of significance for Reading as they're celebrating 150 years as a football club. It's expected to be a packed out stadium, and I really am not sure how this game's going to go for that reason, because either the full house being in there will sort of spur the team on to have this sort of second wind, even with the sort of dismal form that they've been in recently. Sometimes a spark in the crowd is all it takes to go ahead and turn things around. Having said that, if Coventry play to that crowd and they get on top in the early stages, things could turn out to be really messy, couldn't they? I certainly think that Reading carry a goal threat with them, but I just can't see them keeping a clean sheet. I certainly see Coventry getting at least 1 goal in this game. So it feels like Reading are running out of time, because that shark in the water that is Derby are getting closer and closer and closer as the weeks go on. For a prediction in this game, I think it is Coventry that I'm edging towards, you know. Obviously, it was a defeat for Reading in midweek, a draw for Coventry against Blackpool. I'm going to go 2-1 Coventry in that game. FIFA's going 1-0 Coventry. We'll see if the crowd makes a difference in that one, because it needs to for Reading at this point, doesn't it? Next up then, and for Sunday's game between Swansea and Bristol City. Both teams knocking about in a fairly similar point of the table at the moment, both in that sort of lower mid-table region. They're both next to each other in 16th and 17th. Both have been fairly inconsistent recently. Obviously, Swansea had that brilliant win over Blackburn at the weekend, but couldn't follow it up and fell to a really disappointing 3-0 defeat to Stoke in midweek. Obviously, that Ryan Bennett red card not exactly helping procedures. Bristol City, though, have been just as, perhaps even more inconsistent than Swansea. In their last 6 matches, they've had 2 wins, 3 defeats and a draw, all peppered in throughout there. It was a decent way to get back to winning ways in midweek, though, after a disappointing display at Bloomfield Road over the weekend. They beat Reading by 2-1. And while Bristol City still carry that goal threat with them, I think it may be the away side that I am ever so slightly edging towards in this one. A draw certainly wouldn't surprise me, but I'm just going to edge Bristol City for a 2-1 away win in this game. FIFA's gone 1-0 Bristol City. Swansea been a side who have been tough to sort of bank on recently. And then as Monday night's match, we've got West Brom going up against Blackburn. A really interesting game in the promotion picture. Obviously, Blackburn in action in midweek, losing against Nottingham Forest. Not exactly the easiest of matches to go into and try and bounce back from the weekend's defeat. And, I mean, we've been over it 100 times so far, but Blackburn's running over these next few weeks really does look quite tough, and that it will be a sort of make or break period for the club. For West Brom, they lost 2-0 to Sheffield United, Steve Bruce's first game in charge. While they did did lose. There were a couple patches throughout that game when there was a little bit more football on display from West Brom, but Steve Bruce doesn't really have the luxury of, you know, waiting to get his feet under the table, because ultimately with that defeat, West Brom have dropped to 9th in the Championship. I know it's incredibly close around this point of the table at the moment, but looking at West Brom's next few fixtures, they've got games against Blackburn, Luton and Middlesbrough. So 3 games right there off the bat, as well as that Sheffield United game, all playing sides who are in and around the promotion picture at the moment. So they can't afford to lose really any more ground on those teams that they're playing at the moment. I have a feeling that this one may end up being a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this game. FIFA's going 1-0 Blackburn. Both sides could really do with a win in this one though. But there we have it, guys. Those are my predictions ahead of the weekend. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on them all in the comments down below. Make sure to get your predictions in there. I think we could have some upsets around the corner. Just has that feeling this sort of weekend with some of these matchups. But as always, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Apart from that though, I'll see you all in the next one.